What if, in a single moment, everything you believed about strength, loyalty, and love was shattered? Not by a storm, not by fate, but by a silence you chose? What if the past you tried to outrun found you again in the shadows? This is not just a story. It is a wake-up call. Stay with me till the end, because one choice, one forgotten promise, will change everything. The wind howled through the narrow alleyway. Dark clouds gathered above the rooftops, heavy with unspoken tension. Each step echoed like a warning against the cracked pavement. Elias tightened his coat, but the cold still sank into his bones. He had walked this path 100 times, but tonight something felt different. The streetlights flickered, casting long shadows that stretched like fingers reaching for him. The air smelled of rain, rust, and something else. Something he could not name. His heartbeat quickened, not from fear, but from a sense that something was waiting, something hidden in the silence between each breath. He passed the old bookstore. The windows were dark, the signs swaying in the wind. An open newspaper fluttered across the ground. Headlines unreadable, pages torn. He bent down to pick it up. A sharp sound pierced the silence. Metal scraping against metal. He froze, turned his head slowly. Behind him, the alley was empty. No footsteps, no voices, only the sound of his own breathing. He stood, crumpling the newspaper in his fist. The wind stopped, as if the world was holding its breath. Then he saw it, a figure, standing at the far end of the alley, still, watching, not moving, not blinking, just there. Elias squinted, trying to make out the face, but the shadows clung to it like a mask. He took a step forward. The figure did not react. A siren wailed in the distance. The figure lifted its arm, pointed at Elias.
His mouth went dry.
A sudden chill ran down his spine. Memories surged in his mind. Memories he had buried deep. The hospital room. The steady beeping of machines. His brother's pale face. The promise he never kept. The figure took a step forward. Elias stumbled back. The air seemed thicker now, harder to breathe. He turned to run, but the alley twisted behind him. The path he had just walked was gone, replaced by a wall of bricks and shadow. He looked back. The figure was closer. He could hear it now, breathing. Each inhale rasped like wind through dead leaves. Each exhale colder than the air around him. Elias pressed his back to the wall. He whispered his brother's name. The figure stopped, tilted its head. It spoke, but no sound came out, only silence. And then, Elias leaned forward, straining to hear. The silence was louder than any scream. His ears rang, as if the world had gone mute. The figure's mouth moved again. Still no sound. Only the weight of the moment pressing against his chest. Then the lights went out. All of them. The alley was swallowed in blackness. Elias could not see his own hands. Could not see the figure. But he could feel it. Closer now. The sound returned in a wave. A low hum, like electricity crawling through metal. It buzzed in his teeth, in his bones. He backed away blindly, palms scraping the wall. Rough brick tore at his skin. Warm blood trickled down his wrist. He whispered, not knowing why. "I am sorry." The humming stopped. A moment of stillness. Then a hand touched his shoulder.
Cold. Heavy. Real.
He turned and saw a face he knew.
His own.
But older, eyes sunken, skin pale and cracked like dried clay. The figure stared at him with a gaze full of grief and fury and truth. You forgot who you were. The voice came from nowhere, everywhere. You broke the promise. Elias shook his head. I tried. I wanted to. The figure stepped closer. You ran. You let him die alone. Elias dropped to his knees. Rain began to fall, soft at first, then harder. The water mixed with blood and dirt on his hands. His breath came in gasps, not from fear, but from remembering. The night his brother called, begged him to come, and Elias chose silence, chose comfort. Now the silence had come for him. The figure knelt beside him, placed a hand over his heart. You still carry him. And then the touch burned, not with fire, but with truth. A truth Elias had buried too deep to face. His chest ached. Memories surged like a rising tide. Laughter in a hospital bed. A paper Crane handed to him with trembling fingers. Promise me you will never give up, his brother had whispered. He had nodded, then walked away. The figure's eyes glowed with something ancient. Not anger, not pity, but knowing. You lost yourself when you left him. The rain poured harder now, soaking him to the bone, washing the blood from his skin, but not the guilt. Never the guilt. You have one chance, the voice said. Stand, or stay here forever. Elias looked up. The figure was fading, becoming mist, becoming memory. The darkness around him began to shift. Walls cracked. Light bled through. A faint golden thread of dawn. He reached for it. His hands trembled, but he reached. The alley opened into a street bathed in pale morning light. He stepped forward, the weight on his chest still there, but lighter. Behind him, the alley was gone, as if it had never existed.
He walked on,
past the bookstore, past the silence, toward something new. A boy stood at the corner, holding a paper crane. He looked up and smiled. Elias stopped. His throat tightened. Where did you get that? He asked. The boy shrugged. Someone said to give it to you. He held it out. Elias took it, hands shaking. The folds were the same. The color. The tiny signature written in the crease. His brother's name. And for the first time in years, Elias breathed without pain. The paper crane rested in his palm, light as air, but it carried the weight of years, of choices, of silence, of loss. Elias stared at it, his vision blurring as tears welled in his eyes, not from sorrow alone, but from something deeper, recognition. He looked up. The boy was gone. No footsteps. No sound. Just the empty sidewalk, glistening with rain. He turned the crane over in his hand. The signature shimmered faintly in the morning light. As if alive. As if waiting. Elias stood there for a long moment, breathing in the scent of wet concrete and new beginnings. A car passed. A dog barked in the distance. The world moved forward.
So did he.
He tucked the crane into the pocket over his heart and began to walk, not aimlessly, not afraid, but with purpose. The city around him stirred awake. Shutters opened. Lights flickered on. Faces appeared behind windows. Life resumed. But Elias was different now. Not healed, not whole, but alive. And with every step, he whispered the same promise. This time not in silence. Not too late. I will not forget again. He walked on, toward a life he had once abandoned, toward redemption, toward strength born from pain. The paper crane pressed gently against his chest, a heartbeat beside his own. The streets widened before him, no longer walls of regret, but open doors waiting to be entered. The cold had not vanished, but it no longer bit. It reminded him he was still here, still breathing, still able to choose. He passed a mirror in a shop window. For the first time, he did not look away. His reflection stared back, weathered, worn, but no longer lost. He nodded to himself, a silent agreement, to carry the weight, to honor the promise,
To keep going.
A busker strummed a quiet tune on the corner. The chords wove into the air like threads of memory. Elias paused, listened, and smiled. He had once feared silence. Now he understood it. It was not a punishment. It was a space to listen, to feel, to begin again. He turned down a street he had not walked in years. The buildings leaned with age. The sidewalk cracked in familiar places. But the path no longer felt like a trap. He stopped in front of a house with a blue door. His hands trembled as he reached out, knocked once,
Twice.
A moment passed. Then the door opened, and standing there, was a woman. Her eyes were wide, a mix of surprise and recognition. Her hair, once a deep shade of auburn, was now streaked with silver, but her smile had not aged. "Elias," she whispered, as if his name was a question. He nodded, his throat tight. The words he had rehearsed for years seemed to escape him now. Her gaze softened, and she stepped back, motioning for him to come inside. "You've been gone a long time," she said, her voice steady but filled with a depth of feeling he had not expected. "I know," he replied, his voice rough from too many unspoken apologies. She led him into the warm glow of the house, the smell of coffee and cinnamon filling the air. It was a place he had once called home, but it had become a stranger to him, its corners filled with memories he could never fully reach. She sat him down at the kitchen table, poured him a cup of coffee, and for a moment there was silence. Not the heavy kind of silence he had left behind, but the comfortable shared kind that exists between two people who have loved and lost, but are still here, still breathing. "I didn't know how to find you," she said finally, her fingers tracing the edge of her mug. "But I never stopped hoping." Elias stared at the steam rising from his cup, his mind a whirl of conflicting emotions. Hope, regret, the weight of years. "You should have hated me," he murmured, "for everything I left behind." She shook her head, her eyes soft yet unwavering. "I never hated you, Elias. I just waited, and when you were ready, I hoped you'd come back." His chest tightened again, but this time it felt like a release. He had no more excuses, no more reasons to run. He looked up at her, his voice breaking the silence. "I'm ready now." And for the first time in what felt like forever, he meant it. The moment hung in the air. The past, the pain, the lost time, all seemed to melt away in the warmth of that simple truth. He wasn't perfect. He wasn't whole, but he was here. And for the first time, he could see the future clearly, not through the lens of regret, but through the eyes of someone who had learned to forgive, to stand again, to live. She reached across the table, placing her hand gently over his. It was warm, steady, anchoring him to the moment. "You do not have to fix everything today," she said softly. "You just have to stay." He nodded, his voice caught in his throat. For so long, he had believed leaving was strength, that silence was protection. But now he saw the truth. Staying, facing the broken pieces, was the real courage. They sat there in the quiet hum of morning, the house breathing around them, familiar and forgiving. The paper crane still rested over his heart, a fragile reminder of all he had lost and all he still had time to reclaim. Outside, the rain had stopped. The sky, once bruised with storm, was now clearing, soft light spreading across the street like a promise. He stood slowly, walked to the window, and looked out at the world. Children splashed in puddles. A dog barked, chasing its tail. Life, in all its ordinary beauty, moved on. And so would he. He turned back to her.
There was so much more to say,
So much more to heal. But they had time now. He smiled, not the forced smile he had worn for years, but one that reached his eyes, one born from something real. "I want to make things right," he said, "one day at a time." She smiled back, tears shining but unfallen. "Then let today be the first." And just like that, a new chapter began. Not loud, not dramatic, but powerful in its quiet truth. He had come back, not just to her, but to himself. Later that evening, the house was filled with the soft rhythm of life, the clinking of plates, the low hum of music, the scent of fresh bread warming the air. Elias stood in the doorway of his old room, fingers brushing the edges of a dusty photo frame. In it, two boys laughing in a summer field, carefree, untouched by time. He closed his eyes, felt the ache, but also the peace. Grief no longer swallowed him. It sat beside him now, like an old friend, a reminder of love that never truly left. He stepped outside onto the porch, the sky painted in fading amber and lavender. A gentle breeze moved through the trees, carrying the distant sound of laughter. He held the paper crane in his hand, its creases worn but intact. And for a moment, he simply stood there, breathing, present. He unfolded it slowly. Inside, in the smallest handwriting, a message he had forgotten was there. "When you are ready, come home." Elias smiled, the weight in his chest lifting like morning mist. He looked out at the quiet street, then back at the house glowing with warmth. And he stepped forward, heart open, ready, because sometimes strength is not about holding on. It is about returning, about choosing to begin again. And in that choice, in that quiet, unwavering choice, he finally found his way home.